Hello and welcome back to the LovePod Podcast. On today's episode, we've got part 2 of our recaps with Kenny Barnes from season 1 of Love is Blind. In today's episode, we'll be recapping episode 11 of season 6 of Love is Blind. Don't forget, if you aren't already subscribed to the LovePod, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our weekly Love is Blind recaps. Let's get into the episode.
All right. And if you're not watching live, we are back with part 2 of our episode with Kenny Barnes from Love is Blind season 1, recapping season 6, episode 11, Roller Coaster of Love. And boy, is it literal, figurative, everything. So we are back to the barbecue. We really haven't even started unpacking that one. Mm-hmm. And Matthew isn't there, but is still featured in the barbecue. Any thoughts? Do you agree he looks like Clark Kent? Because AD was not having that.
Yeah, Jordan, what do you think?
That's not the person that came to my mind. I guess it's the glasses, but...
Yeah. I mean, Clark Kent's a stretch. And everyone's got like doppelganger references, right? Especially like what's your celebrity look like, which has been a huge theme of this season, especially. Good, better, and different. I mean, he just struck me as he's a handsome guy, but he just seems kind of like your typical finance guy. No offense to finance guys.
Have you met him yet?
No, I have not. I've gotten to meet a few of them. Trevor being one of them. I mean, he seems like a likable, nice enough guy. But
sure,
such as most things go, right? Like if you don't actually know someone and knowing them before, right, they go on a show, and things that also happen afterwards. It's just there's a lot of unknowns there. So I'm sure I'll figure it out though in the coming months with Vince.
And there's people that are great friends or great people, and they're just terrible at relationships and terrible at cutting things off or whatever the case may be when he does come out and talk. So he might be an amazing friend, and maybe he's just not the best. He might be like the Chris of this season, it seems like, where just didn't want to ghost, but didn't want to lead somebody on. Who knows? We can't speak for him. Yes. But like Jordan said in the last episode, so they sit down and chat, Chelsea and Trevor. What did you think of this conversation, Jordan?
Well, I really liked Trevor in the pods, and I really thought, like a lot of people, I think that Chelsea should have chosen Trevor. But I mean, I felt like their conversation was, it was fine. I don't know. It didn't stick out to me. I think I thought it was going to be a bigger thing than it was to me.
Okay.
I don't know.
What about you, Kenny?
I think that's a fair take. I really think that for all the circumstances, right? Like I think for him to make a point to continue to bring Jimmy into the conversation too, like he clearly was just, hey, like we're having this talk. And again, I think it kind of ties into just production, probably push them, encourage them to have that. And so Trevor was just being, and again, like I think he did it very well, but he was being playful. He was engaging her about it. But at the same time, like, y'all are still, going through this experiment. It's like, I'm not here to bash the wedding, so to speak. So I thought he handled that pretty well.
There were 2 takeaways I got really. One was that she would not be okay if the shoe was on the other foot, and he was saying the things, Jimmy was saying things to Jess that she was saying to Trevor, like you were my number one until the last day, and saying she still has the bracelet was another big thing. Because I can see from a nostalgia point of that period of your life being on this crazy Netflix show, wanting to have mementos. But if Jess had given Jimmy something, I don't think Chelsea would be okay with him keeping it. So I felt like it was a little hypocritical. I know your team, Chelsea, Jordan, but it just seemed like what she is okay with and what she expects back are not the same.
No, that's actually a really good point. And that's where, again, there's so much, right, that's missing, who knows? Who knows what was going through her head too when it's like, hey, let's frame this conversation. They could have also asked her, like, well, how how would this have made you feel if you guys were in the pods dating? Let's talk about, past, things that you guys talked about. Like, oh, I still have the bracelet. I still have this. Like, you just don't, we as viewers, right? Like, you just don't know enough about what led to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course we have Amy and Johnny once again arrive. Nothing much going on there. There they are. And then Sarah Ann makes her grand entrance. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and we'll circle back because Sarah Ann, AD pulls her aside to have a conversation. And that was pretty memorable. So I'm going to start with you this time, Kenny, what you thought of that conversation and what it might have looked like behind the scenes.
Yeah. Again, you don't know what time, right, that conversation happened, based off of when she got to the party versus how much, how long had they been there? And I hate to say it, but like, how long have they been drinking? What other conversations happened? Maybe there was already, some tension and other conversations had between other people, Sarah Ann and others. But it's also one of those things too, where I could see them pushing AD to say like, all right, you need to go talk to her about X, Y, Z.
Okay.
Now I did think that the conversation was, for most of it, right, it was very, respectable. I can understand where Sarah Ann's coming from, right? Where it's like, hey, I just got invited here, right, by production to be a part of the, the lake day. I don't want any drama, but at the same time, like everyone knows better. Like you understand the dynamic and you understand what you're walking into. And also it's important to remember too, is like at this point, everyone in the cast has phones. So if you even like go back and some of the comments, right, of like, oh, like this person's entering in the chat. It's like, oh my God, like I didn't even know they're going to be here. Like I call BS on that. Everyone talked, right? Like we all knew where each other were. And that's the same thing with Jimmy too. Like when Chelsea was getting upset with him about like, oh, well, you were out with so-and-so. He's like, oh, you didn't talk to them. It's like, I guarantee you that they all knew what each other were doing that night.
Sure.
So yeah, as far as like how that conversation went though, I mean, I think it was right for her to ask those questions and at least, kind of call Sarah Ann out because, technically she was there to do exactly that. I mean, it's, whether they show it right through production or not, like Jeremy and Laura were still together. So in the real world, that would obviously not fly. So obviously during filming, it's different.
Okay. What were your thoughts on that conversation, Jordan?
I thought it was like a tense conversation. It was kind of like there were parts of it that I thought maybe, okay, we're kind of, I don't know, on the same page. But then it felt like at the end, it felt like Sarah Ann was really like upset about being confronted, I guess, about it.
Yeah.
Like she really, and even when she sat down and she talked to Jeremy, she, she's really just maintaining her innocence. She's like, I didn't do anything wrong. Whereas obviously everybody else sees that very differently, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I thought she hasn't turned off her comments today and people are coming at her left and right. And I said, you are very brave because that is definitely leaving doors open that I would rather seal shut and tape and never come out again. But she made it seem like Jeremy said that he and Laura were broken up and had ended things when he met up with her. So it's not painting him in the best light, but she kind of just dismisses it. And it was like, oh, okay, he said that. And so it's fine. And even though AD is being very clear that that's not the case, she just brushes it under the rug. And AD had said, if you feel interrogated, that's on you, baby. And it's true. I didn't think AD was being disrespectful at all. I thought she was trying to just get a better understanding of the situation. And it seems like there's one person every season who they put in that role who is like the nurturer of the group and stirring a little bit of the pot, but just trying to get other sides of the story.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, right? Is they're trying to get different perspectives. And so I think that could have been the moment where it's they both have been there for a little bit. You're having some fun. Jordan, I think you brought up a great point where it's like it was a fine conversation until towards the end. It definitely got a little bit, snippy back and forth, but it's Sarah Ann, like you already knew what to expect going into that setting. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? If you show up to that party knowing enough about what's going on, like you couldn't have seen that going well. Like there's going to be drama at some point. So just kind of be careful what you buy into, right?
Yeah. And we see that now, circling back to Laura and Jeremy finally having this conversation after they supposedly haven't spoken other than very terse words for 4 days, 3 or 4 days.
Sure.
And I felt like, listen, Laura is not I didn't think she treated him the best. I thought she was very hard on him in a lot of small ways, but that didn't make what he did right. And he's trying to gaslight her into saying that it's her fault. And maybe it was. Maybe he knew that he didn't want to be with her at a certain point. But the way the timeline added up to whether you agree with Sarah Ann messaging him in this situation or not, he should have broken off with Laura before pursuing Sarah Ann. Of course, hindsight is 2020. But it was just kind of awkward. He said he packed up her stuff for her. How do you know that she wanted to leave? They must have been broken up at that point. It just didn't really make sense to me. And it seemed like he was more concerned with his reputation among the cast and America than with what actually happened with the situation and his relationship with Laura. So I thought that was pretty shitty way to handle it and a little bit of F-boy vibes. But did you guys have a different thought about that? Kenny, I'll start with you.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm gonna mute myself. These dogs.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I'm surprised my dogs aren't barking too. They're passed out in their beds. It is really tough until like, I guess unless I was able to sit down right and get both of their perspectives and then make a decision off of that, because it truly is one of those moments where it's like you got two sides and you have the truth. So somewhere in the middle, like I think there's a lot that contributed to it. I'm sure like Jeremy's probably a great friend. Like he seems like a fun guy, seems like a nice enough guy, but the experiment could also get the best out of you. It also get the worst out of you. And depends on the moment. And so now that time has gone on, and again, like I'm not TMZ, but stuff that has led to, right. Stuff that's come out of his past, it doesn't really put him in a better position based off of how things ended on the show with him and Laura. We'll see how it plays out, right? And time definitely will reveal, whatever actually happened with her. I'd say that production, they've been pretty consistent that like she's just like she's like the bad bee. So like she leads with an authoritative fist, and like she demands a lot. But I have a younger sister who's pretty bossy. So like you can deal with that. I never got a sense that she was being like super rude, right, or aggressive. I just think that that's her personality type. And I think to your point, I think there's moments where it's like, all right, like it would be more plausible that he's gaslighting her to make himself look like the victim out of convenience for the fact that he's kind of fallen short of at least being there for her. That's my take on it.
And I feel like that always happens where anytime somebody tries to paint themselves in a good light, we saw it with Andrew in season 3. We saw it with, we saw it with Matthew this season. Anytime they try to paint themselves in a good light, they are getting productions calling them out. They showed that by Zine with Andrew. They showed Matthew saying, what would America think of him? And I think they're doing the same with Jeremy. What did you think, Jordan?
Well, mainly just that, when we obviously Laura she handed it to him. It was a good moment. I liked it. Yep. But then we have this sit down. We're continuing the conversation. We have Sarah Ann and Jeremy sitting down, and she's basically saying, I don't think what I did was wrong. He's saying, I don't think what you did was wrong. And then they went and rode jet skis around, which I'm sure was like some, cutting and putting stuff together. But it just seemed like he was just so flippant about the fact that he had just, ended an engagement. He just went and, hopped on the water with the other woman. So
and she didn't miss a beat there either when Well, first, Laura, obviously, with kick rocks with open-toed shoes. She is on it with her insults. And then Sarah Ann glossing over, we said in the last episode, Jeremy saying he had ended things with Laura when it looked like to the viewers, he ended things with her at the barbecue, or really she ended things with him. And I also am curious the dynamic. So we found out last episode, Vince and Sarah Ann tried to work things out. And then Sarah Ann and Jeremy tried to work things out. So the timeline of that, because filming happens on a pretty short timeline, right, Kenny? It's like 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, it's right at 6 weeks. I think it was like 45 days from start to finish. It's very tight.
We know, they went to Hawaii after the pods. And then it seems like right after that, maybe things just didn't go well in Hawaii. We didn't find out the full story, but then she moved right back on to Jeremy. So I'm interested to talk to her and see what that dynamic is, because they don't show Vince at all. We see 0.5 seconds of the most social cast member out there.
Yeah.
And he had a pretty major part in that story too.
Oh, no doubt. And that's a great point, right? When there's so many other instances like that in every season where it's just they couldn't fit into the plot, right, and into the character development. But they could have easily done it. It just would have gone down a different path. So who knows, right? They could have had a scene where Vince was a part of it, and he thought, oh, like I'm going to be a part of this for sure, and just that didn't make the cut. So it is wild to look at.
And we know now that the cast doesn't get to see the episodes before they air. Did you guys have that opportunity, or was it just as it comes out 2 years later, you're watching it for the first time?
So ours, we got to watch the first two releases. When he got to the After the Altar and the reunion, we didn't have early access to that, but we did have, I think it was like 48 hours advance. And I think really it was just to prepare us for what we really didn't know. And context is really helpful. The world had just shut down. So we were all super vulnerable, just like what was going on in general. And it's like, hey, by the way, we're going to drop this off, on y'all. And it's almost Valentine's Day. You haven't seen your friends and family, right, in 2 weeks since there's nothing going on. By the way, this show, right, that we've had, in the back burner for 2 years, it's coming out. Like, okay.
Ta-da!
And no one, between that and Tiger King, right? That's all people can watch. So thankfully they gave us like a 48 hour, if I do remember, it was like 48 hours, if not 24 hours, a precursor to watch it. And that helped me. So I was in a very serious relationship, now married to the same woman. I watched all of it to write down things that happened to then give to my now wife, so she had context. Because I knew I knew enough, right? That's all right. Like this stuff is not going to be either 100% accurate. It's going to be a little bit misleading. The timeline of things too, to that point, right? Like if I said, oh, like I love her, she's the woman of my dreams. Those were interviews that took place in the same backdrop, sometimes 30 days later, right? It's like, oh, let's wind back. How'd you feel the moment, right, that, you talked to Kelly on your fourth date when you guys decided that you guys were going to, go through with it and propose to the wall? I'm like, so when you have that question asked over a series of days that are separated, you answer it differently. So fortunately we had that advance release, because that helped me out tremendously to get that into my, now wife's hands. Because otherwise I can't imagine how you just let's react to what the world says and,
and no preparation, it seems like. I mean, several people had asked us if we get screeners ahead of time, and we're like, no, how do we get on this list? And then I asked some of the cast, and they said, no, we don't get to see it. So it seems like it changed from your season. I can only imagine maybe that's why
I think
so much more brutal.
I think so. And I really do think it was just because we were the first ones. They probably had their hearts out for us a little bit, just because we anyone, I don't care who it is, right? If it's Lauren, if it's Jess, if it's Barnett, we were all pretty nervous about it. And we were all confident with who we are. We're, fortunately, we're all, well-to-do people, have a tremendous amount of respect for each and every one of them. But when that was happening, we'd had so much conversation leading up to it that it almost got to a point where we were exhausted with people asking us, right? It's like, hey, you went on that show you filmed 2 years ago. Like, when's that coming out? And it always became like a joke, like, oh, like it's never going to be a thing. And little did we know, like it became a really big thing. So yeah, I think that of all the things I could thank production for, it would probably be that. It's just to at least give us a little head start before it got crazy.
And we talked about that too. It's been so long since you filmed. You're probably exhausted of talking about the same things of your relationship that happened 6 years ago over and over and over. So what could we do that's different? And having you guys on for the recaps too. We're going to ask some questions. We're going to get some fan questions in there. But being able to have a different vibe than, okay, what were you thinking at this moment with Kelly? And what was going through your head when you spoke with Cameron about this? And, so we appreciate that you're still hanging in there 6 seasons later with Love is Blind and the Love is Blind crew.
Yeah. Well,
Pod Squad.
And obviously I'm doing it more so just because it's Charlotte based, right? Like I haven't really been that engaged with other seasons, and I've kept up with them. I interact with, a good bit of them on like Instagram and stuff. But yeah, when it was obviously released in Charlotte, there's so many connections through like, small business owners I'm friends with. And it's like, oh, I met so-and-so, or, oh, they filmed right at my coffee shop. So like it was just easy interaction. And that's actually how I met Vince, was my wife's former assistant. She met him, I think, out with friends. And so they get to talking, and, 6 degrees of separation. It's like, oh, well, like, you're on Love is Blind. Well, like my former boss's husband's Kenny. And like, so we got connected through that. And, Vince reached out, he's like, hey, would you grab coffee with me? I was like, dude, sure. Like if any way I can help you out, because I'd navigated it, and like we kicked off the show. It's an experiment, right, that no one else fully understands. So if I can help you out in any way, shape, or form, like I'm here to do that. So that's why I'm involved more with this season, just because it's close to home.
No, that totally makes sense. And it's really great that you guys have that inner support system of being able to give advice and get advice about how to handle these situations that nobody else has gone through. It's a very small world. Even in these big cities, Atlanta, Houston, Charlotte, you guys all run into each other, it seems like, and you do have a lot of interaction. So it's good that everybody has each other's support.
Totally agree.
Moving on to these excursions, I guess I'll call them, or like date nights. Jordan, what did you think of the dates?
Well, the one that stuck out to me was Chelsea and Jimmy at the amusement park, because I thought that was such a cute insight into like a more positive aspect of their relationship. It was really fun and lighthearted. Just to see them having fun and laughing together was really refreshing to me. And not that I really am hoping one way or another for them, but I just like to see something a little different, because we've seen so much negative between the two of them. It was really nice to see something positive with those two.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think about these date nights, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, theirs was my favorite as well, because I really think it was about as authentic as it gets. Now, granted, if you have a private access to Carowinds, to the amusement park, I'd be hard pressed that like anyone couldn't have fun. But for them, I felt like, I'm sure even during filming, regardless of where they were at, from the relationship status, like that had to have been a huge, just like sigh of relief. Like, all right, we can kind of like let our guards down. We're being ourselves. We're getting to be, relaxed and loose. So Jordan, that's a great point, because you don't get that right during the 45 days of filming. It's like, okay, so it's just going to be stressful the entire time. For them, they got to kind of break away. They had cameras on them, but got to have some fun too.
And it seemed like that was the most unique activity. I mean, we did see the sneaker painting with AD and Clay, and then Chelsea and Jimmy carved the ice. But it's like they got a whole closed theme park, and then Clay and AD did get a private dinner, but then they just threw some s'mores at Amy and Johnny, and they're like, all right, you're good. Whatever. Enjoy the bonfire that you guys had to build yourselves. Seemed like that they really were setting up Jimmy and Chelsea for like the most fun. Maybe because they had the biggest roller coaster, literally, figuratively. Again.
That was good.
One conversation I did want to get everybody's feedback on is, so one of the big topics that has come up a lot throughout this season is birth control, because of the dynamics with Amy and Johnny discussing how they're going to handle their relationship and making sure that they don't have kids before they're ready. So to me, at least, it seems like Johnny just doesn't understand the perspective of what happens to a woman's body when they take pills, when they take hormones for birth control. That's what I got. There's a lot of other people whose perspective is he should know better. And why is he so adamant? Why doesn't he know what a condom is? So where do you think he's coming from, Kenny?
I mean, God, that's really tough to make assumptions. It could be a generational thing. Like I'll be 33 at the end of, well, I guess what, March is tomorrow? It's March 1st tomorrow?
March 1st is tomorrow.
Yeah. So my birthday is March 28th. So I'll be 33 at the end of this coming month. And, I think what, Johnny's 25, 26?
He's young. Yeah. Maybe 27. He's in that mid to late 20s.
Yeah. So like, I do know that like sex education in middle school, like it was kind of phasing out. And I'm not saying that they don't, have sex education and they don't talk about it, but like, I think it was a lot more structured in school, even before I was in middle school. Like I do remember that some of my buddies that were a little bit younger than me, like they didn't talk about it in their in their health classes. So I kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. Like it really could have just been like he was not educated on it.
Yeah, I agree.
But I also think that that's societally, like it's also our responsibility as just adults to educate yourself. So it's like there's kind of like a catch-22 there, where it's like I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but it's also it's not like you don't have access to the information. It's not like you aren't an adult and you haven't been in other dating relationships. There's so many ways to look at it. Also, it could be production just keeps talking about it because it could have been one thing, right, that they talked about for a little bit longer than other topics, and so they've kind of made a thing out of it. Like Jordan, okay. I saw you kind of raise your head too. Like I think it's spiraled into this thing that like if he was here right now, right, having a beer with me, he'd probably like, I know about sex education. Like there's a lot of missing things here. And like, of course, practicing safe sex, right? Like they're doing that. But I definitely think it's kind of gotten blown out of proportion just a little.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. I feel like they're just, because I feel like they've had this conversation like 3 times now at this point. It's like, it almost feels like that's the only thing that they not even disagree on, but it's like the only thing and the only conversation that they had that was like maybe a little bit difficult in any way. And so they've just had to have it over and over and over again just to provide something, for them to put on the show.
I told Vince.
They're one negative.
I told Vince, like when when growing up, like you learn how to cook like one dish. So like for me, it was like French toast. But like when I figured out how to make French toast, like, well, I just make French toast all the time. Like that's all they have. So like to Jordan's point, like I think there's just like, all right, well, like this is the only like hot topic that we can talk about. So like have at it. Let's talk about condoms again, Johnny. He's like, okay.
Yeah. if we have to. It doesn't seem like a problem with Amy. So many people are coming really hard at Johnny for this. And again, like it's maybe just because production keeps bringing it up, but she's fine having the conversation, and they're both standing their ground about whether he's going to get a vasectomy or she's going to be on birth control or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I think we're making it as the fans a way bigger deal too than it needs to be, or that it even is between the two of them. It's their relationship. It's their birth control.
Well, and that's a good point too, to just, I guess, focus on is it also could be production. Maybe they think like that's useful content. Like,
sure.
There's parts, right, where like they might use it as like an educational piece. Like it really might not even mean that much to Johnny and Amy. Like it could just be production wanted to talk about it, and like of all the things that Johnny and Amy probably talked about, and I'm sure they're tired of hearing about this themselves, right? Regardless of if they talked about it a lot and like how sincere it was. I think production could have just taken it and they're like, oh, well, like there could be couples out there that aren't educated. And so we're going to make Amy and Johnny the sex ed couple. That's a hot take. It's a hot take, but like, it's the only thing I can make sense of like why they keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like also the education from a female's perspective, you know, I know my wife, like she was on birth control all the way up until, you know, recent, but it was really just because of the fear of getting off of it. So it's the same thing with Amy of like getting on birth control, the chemical imbalance that has a huge impact. And I know from conversation, obviously I haven't experienced it. But yes, like that could have also been a very sensitive thing for Amy during filming. So maybe that's why she is participating in the conversation, because Johnny's like, well, like I'll do my best to just kind of keep it focused on me, not you, because they could have been pressing her about it. Like, hey, why are you not having sex? Oh, like I don't want to get on birth control. And like, you know, I could see a place where like they probably pressured her a little bit about it. And she was probably tired of having to say like no. So Johnny probably just came in to act like the gullible guy, like, oh, well, you know, condoms, like I've never used a condom, you know, what I don't know him, you know, that well. But I can see a place where like he was just kind of saving her in a very like respectful way. Sure. Right. It's like, hey, I'll participate. Yeah, I'll participate in this if I have to. Yeah.
He took one for the team there, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like there's the most recent seasons, there's always one hot button topic. And they did it with Married at First Sight too, where they kind of danced around religion, they kind of dance around politics, whatever the case may be. And then this season, I would say is, and maybe it's just because of the location, like religion has really been at the forefront, even the cast bios. And even even though we don't see them anymore, Brittany and Kenneth really focusing on their faith as the main thing that tied them together, and that being important in their relationship. We didn't see that as much as previous seasons. So maybe this is, like you mentioned, the soapbox that we're going to get for this season. And this is the way they're going to tie it in. I could see that too. Yeah. But it's interesting. It's never come up previously. And I'm sure that's a conversation that couples have had if they don't want to have kids on the show.
Very much so. Yeah. Like I know just between, you know, conversations that Kelly and I had, I know conversations that Mark and Jessica had, I'm sure Cameron and Lauren, I know they're all people of faith. So yeah, to your point, like that might not have been the sexy topic for production to focus on, but it's definitely been a natural topic, right? For most of the couples that I know of.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the birth control convo, Jordan?
Other than just, you know, I don't know. I am curious about why it's been focused on so much, but other than thinking maybe it's just the only thing that they had to go off of, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
I guess it's their only conflict, it seems like, if it's even a real one.
Yeah.
Okay, then to wrap up this sweet little episode, we end the roller coaster on a high note with wedding dress and tuck shopping, everybody's favorite.
Oh, yeah.
And let's start with the dress shopping. Did anything stand out for you, Jordan?
I really enjoyed, and I don't even remember enjoying it so much in previous seasons, but I could just be a little bit more invested or something. But I really enjoyed the wedding dress shopping and just kind of the overall like support with all of the women in this room. And I feel like that's been a little bit of a theme this season. There was just so much like female support of one another overall in this season that I think has been really beautiful to see. And I actually did get a little bit emotional during the wedding dress try-ons because I don't know, it was just, and everyone is just supporting each other and just like being kind to one another. And it's really, I thought it was a really nice little moment with all the women there.
Yeah. What about you, Kenny?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jordan. I think that was as close as viewers are going to get to knowing how the women, right, interacted with each other, probably on a more frequent basis. You take all the drama, right, and all the storylines out of it. It's like there's a lot of support there. There's a lot of respect there. And yeah, I didn't get emotional, but yeah, it definitely made me think of like, okay, I could see my sisters going through this with their friends. Like it was a very was a very normal thing. It didn't seem like it was produced. So it's cool to see that, because in such a crazy dynamic, right, for people to get that close so quick, to also let their veil down, which that's a pun. To let their veils down, like that's a really special moment. And obviously, anyone that's going to go through the wedding planning process, getting your dress is a huge decision, and that's a big box to check off. So the fact that they could actually go through that together and to share that moment's pretty cool.
You brought up a good point with saying we don't really see a lot of the, I guess, same gender cast bonding behind the scenes. We've seen them go wedding dress shopping before. We've seen them go tux shopping, but we don't see, other than these quick little interactions in the pods, with the exception of Aaliyah and Lydia last season, really close bonding happening. And we all know why that at least appeared to play out the way it did, with Uche being the common denominator. But once it comes out on social media, you can see each other, whether it's somebody that didn't like the other person or had bad blood, really coming together and supporting each other. And this is, both of your good points, the season where we can see these female friendships and the bonds that everybody's forming. Not as much, I think, for the guys as we see the after on social media, like even with different seasons, hanging out with Vince. And I do love that too. I did get the vibe. It sounded like Chelsea is maybe a little bit of a bully. Her friend was saying she used to steal her school lunches, which I thought was an awkward thing to include, but now they're best friends. So I guess it worked out for them. But it was this wholesome moment. And it was like, oh, by the way, I met her because she used to take my lunch every day. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe go a little easier on Chelsea. She's having a really hard time this season.
Yeah. It's it could be just friends being nervous, right? Like first date, weird energy. Like, what are you gonna say? Like, yeah, she's still my sandwiches. It's cool. Like that's the best thing that you can reference. Like, what about our sleepovers? What about all this other stuff that actually happened? Yeah, like that's fine. I mean, I think it's just a good way of like actually seeing behind the scenes a little bit, right? And taking the cameras away from it. It's just, I think it's quality people spending quality time together. That was cool.
I did find it interesting too. So it seems like when women in general go dress shopping, they bring their family, they bring their mothers. And then at least on these seasons, I don't know what it's like tux shopping as a man for your wedding, but it's their friends really. It's not a father-son bonding kind of a thing unless your dad is really in your friendship circle. And so it was the guys being bros. And I cannot tell you how many comments I've seen about Clay's friends, and I think it was Jimmy's friends too, and how they want them on future seasons, the fans, or how attractive they are.
Sure.
And that was the most memorable thing I got out of the tux shopping experience. It's just a totally different vibe, from emotional to like playful, hanging out, low key. Did you feel that way tux shopping for your season?
Oh man. So to give you the tea, our tux shopping experience on season 1 was absolutely terrible. We were there for 8 hours. So I mean, it was a marathon. You do have, you get to hang out with your friends, right? It's like our groomsmen that were they became part of the cast, right?
Sure.
They're all getting to hang out with each other, but it's awkward because they're all trying to figure out like, okay, like has your buddy lost his mind, right? It's like all my friends are talking to Barnett's buddies, like, yeah, like Kenny's an idiot, like I can't believe he's here. But yeah, like it was 8 hours of just like forced filming, essentially.
Okay.
So if you actually go back and watch season 1, I don't even think they showcased the guys' tux selections outside of like Nick coming in, talking about how significant that process is. And I'll close with, I actually don't know of any of my buddies that one, all my friends are married at this point, including myself. It's not really a thing. That's what
I thought.
It's a very solo thing. Like, and one, it was just that no one actually reached out to me to do it, but none of my friends ever talked about it either. It was more of a like, here's a group chat, maybe a picture of like, here's a tux that's hanging up, or hey, this is me in the mirror, right? Like thumbs up, guys. Like, it's going to happen. We're a month out, whatever. But like, I've actually never heard of, and maybe I'm just, in my little circle, like I've never heard of guys going out together to tuck shop. I don't know, maybe some people just have an excuse to go out and drink beer and try on, fancy clothes. I felt like it was like, hey, I'll go in, I'll go to the local tuck shop, get size. I've got this look in mind. I'm open to feedback, but from a guy's perspective, like I kind of want it to be more of an intimate thing, right? Like I know what I want. Give me some feedback. Like if I'm way off, let's figure it out. I'm in and out. I'm a buyer, not a shopper. So
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if other guys are like that.
Jordan, what were you picking up during the tuck shopping?
Yeah, I didn't think much about the tuck shopping. I mean, I was all focused on the dresses.
Of course. Yeah. Again, even as a viewer, you want to see the dresses. The tuxes, you're like, all right, it's a jacket, it's a tie. What else can you do with it? The dresses are where it's at. So I agree. The only other thing that I picked up was Johnny's friend Ruiz said he is high on life for him. And that I thought was very cute that he would be that excited, whether he just wanted to get out of his interview or not, to support his friend in this crazy, crazy experience that most people would not be down for. And that was really the most wholesome moment I got out of tuck shopping. Not that it wasn't wholesome, but again, like you guys said, it was just, most guys don't. The bachelor party's the big thing. It's not going and trying on jackets and shirts and getting measured. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Teach their own. Like if there's people out there that do that, like, and that's fun,
yeah.
By all means, you go for it. Yeah. I got other stuff I want to do with my buddies, like golf or just anything else, to be honest.
You're literally anything else.
I'll go grocery shopping before. Like we got Harris Teeter here. So like Harris Teeter, they have bars there. So like genuinely, like I'd rather go grocery shopping. Not that alcohol has to always be a feature, but like if you're gonna hang out with your friends, that's a very easy social thing. Yeah, like tuck shopping is just not kind of on the list of things I consider to be social.
I do want to, speaking of alcohol, you had mentioned already your role, or like the role alcohol played in your dating experience, the Baileys and coffee thing. Do you feel like it impacts people on the show in general? Like, is that a big, not decision maker, but influence in trying to loosen up and be genuine about the experience or going through the crazy experience in general?
Yeah, well, I guess surface level comment, like obviously alcohol impairs judgment in general.
Sure. Yes.
Right. So
right.
This is where you get PC, Kenny. I would say though that it's important to note, anyone that went on the show, doesn't matter what show it is, but we'll talk about Love is Blind. Like the alcohol is going to be made available, but it was never like, oh, let's bring out a tray of cocktails. Like it was there. You had a beverage cart, you could serve yourself. And yes, there were guys, because we talked about, it's emotionally and physically exhausting. So people look to vices, and I witnessed plenty of guys that ended up having to just leave because it became too much, but they also they drank too much. It was like, well, you can't even show up to make dates. Yeah. So like you can kind of see people falling off that way. I wouldn't say that any of the actual people that end up getting, featured, no one actually over consumed. But we definitely drank, like that, having wine right on date night. I think that was what made us more comfortable with the setting. It wasn't drinking to get drunk. It was like, hey, what can we do right to make this as normal as possible? It's like, oh, I'll have some wine and sit and talk to this person. But yeah, I mean, it was made available. How much you consume is definitely your choice. We've all gone out, right, and had nights where you drink a little bit more. Unfortunately, when you're on set, you're drinking for up to 16 to 20 hours. So like you just kind of do the math. Like if you're having one drink every hour, like you're going to get pretty sauced.
Okay. That's fair. And we don't see obviously Chelsea looking pretty hammered, and during the I'll call it the pre-honeymoon this year, there was a lot of alcohol flowing. But as far as the pods, I didn't notice, and I don't even know if they would show anybody looking so drunk that they're stumbling into the pod and slurring on their dates. We saw Tiffany fall asleep on a prior season during her date, but she just said she's a napping queen. So I can relate there. Before we get into giving you some time to support a really good cause, Kenny, I just wanted to ask you guys any final thoughts or feedback on this episode, Jordan?
No, I don't think I do. I feel like we went through everything that I had on my mind about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything.
All right. Kenny, what about you? Any final thoughts on 10 and 11?
Craziest episode so far. I think obviously all by design. I think production's done a great job of just kind of keeping the castmates together and building the storyline. I can't wait to see what the next couple episodes have in store, just from a little bit that we've seen, also what I've talked about with Vince. But yeah, I mean, I wish the cast nothing but the best, to be just completely genuine and fair. Like
Sure.
whatever ends up happening, right? That's on camera and how it's produced. Like I really hope that they're happy and comfortable with where things are at, and it's going to be a wild ride to the finish. That's for sure.
Okay, now you have a very good cause that you support with 2A Distillery. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So a 2A bourbon / distillery, they just started up. So this is a guy that's a veteran, and he wanted to have a good cause because one, he loves bourbon, but his background is he wants to support disabled veterans. So I want to say it's like 50% of his profits go to help different organizations, right, with disabled veterans. It's called 2A Bourbon, and they actually ship you these really cool like novelty cases that
is really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'd actually never heard anything of it, but good cause, Second Amendment, just so we can defend ourselves if need be. But this is the bourbon in its case, and I'm probably never going to open it up. It'll be one of those things that just always sits on my shelf. It'll be a good talking point or conversation piece, but ultimately it's for the cause. So I'll probably make a post about it later, right, or put it on a story. But super cool guy. His name's Tim Oates, and he's out of Durham, North Carolina. So shout out Tim for all you're doing with 2A bourbon.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks to Tim for supporting disabled veterans. Kenny, thank you to you for coming on and joining us for this very long recap of 2 episodes of the most recent season of Love is Blind. We also have some merch. We're going to donate to a good cause too. We're going to donate to animal rescue, and we'll tell you guys more about that as we plan our Battle of the Seasons, which we have to talk to you about, Kenny.
Awesome.
But we have these cute mugs that Jordan made. I don't know if you could see. There's our little logo, LovePod Podcast.
Yeah.
And then on the back, even though you guys have your pod squad, we are the reality TV pod squad.
That's
so
cool.
We'll be repping these. And of course, our LovePod shirts. So we've got some merch in the works. But I think that is it for today. Thank you to Vince for hooking us up with you, Kenny, for the interview.
Absolutely.
And thanks to Mental Health Hot Takes Podcast for coming on by and asking some great questions. Jordan, anything else to close out the evening?
I think that's it. We've got our interview coming up with Taylor from season 5. We're really excited to talk to her. And just make sure that you subscribe to the Love Pod wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the place at the LovePod Podcast, and we're going to keep doing these recaps through the rest of the season. We're excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with. Thanks, guys, for watching. We love you, and we will see you next time on the Love Pod.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you for listening to the Love Pod. If you want to continue the conversation, make sure you join our Love is Blind fan page on Facebook. The link is in the show notes. We'll see you guys next time.